Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first look at game marketing and funding. My name is Kasanis. Guys, we have finished up our semester at Centennial. It was a rough one. We got through it. It took a lot of effort from my students and a lot of effort from the faculty, but we got through the entire thing. We're all stuck at home still in this pandemic, but this pandemic has offered a couple of interesting opportunities. In the final class of the Game Marketing and Funding course, the professor brought in several different guest speakers to speak about games, how to fund them, and how to market them. I've recorded several of the speakers for you, and I'd like to share them with you. Doing something with the games you create, it's often it's tricky. We often don't know what to do with them. We could put them up on a digital distribution site like Itch or like Steam, go for it on our own, work on those budgets ourselves. But a lot of us are coders, or we are animators, or we are artists. We're game designers. A lot of us aren't marketing people. So the professor brought in a couple of different guest speakers to talk about what you might need to do in order to either fund your game or in order to be able to pitch your game to a larger organization that might help you fund your game. This first guest speaker is Marshal Carper. Marshall works for Mega Cat Studios. They are an indie studio and publisher. He's going to be talking to you a little bit today about the idea of your pitch deck and what you're going to need to do to be able to properly pitch your game to a publisher. All right, everyone? I hope you enjoy.
So Marshall works, as I mentioned, for the company Mega Cat Studios. They are based in, where are you based? Are you in Pittsburgh? That's what I
We're
thought.
based in Pittsburgh, yes.
Yeah. And how long have you been publishing games for?
We've been at it for about 6 years.
Okay, that's great. And how did you get started?
Yeah, so we're a indie developer slash video game publisher. So I made that distinction because there's a couple facets of our business. Our core and our original foundation is new retro development. So when we talk about game publishing, the publishing projects that we're most typically working on are physical publishing of new retro titles. So these are new games that play on the NES or the SNES or the Sega Genesis. We've also done like Game Boy and Dreamcast and things like that in the past as well. So these are creators that are still working on retro mediums. That are making games that are playable on these consoles and playable as cartridges, but they don't have the distribution channels or the manufacturing or the fulfillment pipelines to actually do a physical launch. So we often come in and provide support on that.
Wow, how did you get into such a niche? That's so
Well,
interesting.
our founder James, like most of our team members, really loves retro games. And it was started as a passion project, and over the last 4 years, though, we've seen this corner of gaming kind of reblossom to the point of feeling like a full new renaissance. So the retro industry, aside from inspiring a lot of the mega hit indie games and even mainstream games that we see today, the kind of games that are taking nods from things like pixel art or retro platforming mechanics and that sort of thing, there's a pretty thriving physical business that's around retro games. So there's several international companies that are doing aftermarket hardware production. So like Analog, Hyperkin, NX, they're making new consoles that play old games, that have HD
Mm.
outputs and things like that. And then, of course, the NES Classic and the SNES Classic were mega hits. So it's definitely a weird corner of gaming, but it is surprisingly busy.
That's really cool. And so I guess the big question is how do people learn about you? How do they approach you, and how do you decide whether you're going to help them make a game?
Yeah, and I think since we're focusing our conversation on publishing, I imagine we're ultimately trying to get at how to help individuals in this class find more success when they start pursuing publishing, right?
Yes,
So I'm
exactly.
happy to share what our process looks like on the retro publishing side, but I'm also happy to dig into the experiences we've had as game developers pursuing publishing ourselves and going
Sure.
to things like investment summits and doing investor pitches and all these kinds of things. So I'm kind of happy to cover both sides. Just want to make sure that was okay before I got too far into it.
Yeah, I think that'd be perfect.
Excellent.
Does everybody class thumbs up? Do we like Marshall's? Just a sec. Marshall's topics. Wait, they're all responding.
Well, that's these are the most supportive messages I've seen in a long time. I'm pretty excited about this. Excellent.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So I'll start on the retro side, and a lot of the nuances there apply to, I guess, what we'll talk in terms of traditional game publishing, in terms of what we've
Mhm.
seen and what we've experienced. So on the retro side, when we're coming in to provide support, our role is the physical production, manufacturing, and fulfillment. And we also, not every game, but many games, we also provide porting to modern consoles. So we've
Mhm.
developed our own emulation hardware, emulation software rather, that makes it possible to load an NES game on the Switch or to load a Sega Genesis game on an Xbox One. It sounds like it would be simple to do, but it's strangely difficult, as many things in retro often are. So a lot of times when we engage a developer that's working in these medium, we're also providing that kind of support. And as far as what projects we choose to work on, that kind of classic stereotypical, the gameplay is king, the product is king, that still matters. That's huge. We're looking for a polished experience. We're looking for something that's unique and eye catching. Gamers are pretty pretty critical. They have very sophisticated tastes, and retro is no different. In a lot of ways, retro is even more difficult because you have 30 plus years of what someone believes is a retro experience to kind of work against.
Mhm.
And that can make it sometimes difficult to attract the right customers. So we're looking for a pretty polished experience that is retro enough, but also has some new bite to it, some new flair to it that makes it eye catching. The other markers we look for are indications that the game will be successful. And if that sounds fuzzy, that's because it definitely is. A lot of this publishing stuff is a weird dark art of reading different signs in the bones to get an idea of what product will be a hit and what products won't. Not an exact science by any measure, but we typically look at guideposts like what has the community response been to this developer in the past? Are they active on the right forums? Has their content gotten traction on Reddit? What's their social media activity look like? What do other community leaders in this space say about the developer? How people reacted to gameplay demos? How people reacted to trailers? And we kind of look at all of those things as a rough indicator of whether or not this game will get the right kind of traction to justify the investment into all the hardware and all the marketing that goes with launching a game. So that's the quick and dirty side on the retro side. Um, it's very similar to what we've experienced being developers talking to publishers. So if you kind of go down the road as an indie dev, you'll probably end up sitting in several different talks where major publishers, major investors talk you through what the best practices are. So they'll say things like, you need to have a great concept. You need to have a great team. It's okay if you're small. It's okay if it's early. They kind of they kind of lay out these pillars of things that they say they want, and the actual traction could be a lot different. So I'm sure a lot of folks here have heard about games that were invested in or published based on just a deck alone. That's a little bit of a pipe dream. We've also heard publishers and investors talk about it doesn't matter if it's really early as long as there's a general demonstration of gameplay in the demo. There are use cases where some games have been published on that front, but typically a polished demo is going to be a big thing to have on hand when you're having a publisher conversation. Having a great gameplay video is also going to be super useful. So have a good deck, have a really polished demo, and have a great gameplay video. So a lot of times they'll say they don't really want these things, but in our experience, typically if you go in without them, you're kind of handicapping yourself from the beginning. You're not really giving yourself the best chance at success there. Um, as far as the deck itself, I think there's a couple things we can talk through of what makes a great deck. When you put together your PowerPoint, you should think about it in terms of having the same level of polish as you would the art in your game. So your deck should be an extension of your game. Your deck should feel like it represents your world and your characters and your gameplay. So don't use a generic PowerPoint template. Spend some time, spend some art. If you need to, invest in a decent designer to do something custom, because that deck could be the only experience someone has with your game. So really lean into that and actually treat it as like a creative opportunity. This is a really cool first touch that you get with a publisher to catch their attention. In that deck, you should run through the concept. You should run through the high level features of the game. You should highlight who your team is and what their experience is and what they bring to the table. It might just be you, but if you have some background in gaming or development or indications that A, you're skilled, B, you have some professional indicators that you're trustworthy because you're asking someone to give you a lot of money, that stuff will be very helpful. Also, in your deck, you should break out your target audience. Who do you feel like is the ideal audience for this game? And how you define that. So that's generic stuff like age, demographics, gender, location, all those sorts of things. But also think deeper into the player types and the player profiles. It's totally okay if your game is not targeted at everybody. Most games aren't, but you need to demonstrate that you really understand who the player is for the type of game that you're making and what they care about. Because if you're talking to the publisher that also understands that audience, they're going to kind of use that as a vetting point for you. You should have a breakdown of budget. That's kind of a big conversation in its own right. But you should have an idea of what you're looking for and how you're going to spend that money. So this isn't the dream wish of I need a blank check to do X. So don't just pick a number out of the air. Think more in terms of like your startup. What are your dev costs to finish this game, and make them reasonable dev costs, make them actually grounded in reality. And then also think about the marketing of if you need marketing dollars, where are you going to spend it? How are you going to use it? As soon as you start using imaginary big round numbers that don't have any explanation attached to them, that's a big sign from publishers that you haven't really thought through the business side of the game that you're making. And that's it's a strange thing to learn as a new developer, but it's something to start putting time into looking at some more startup-y kind of stuff, like things like burn rate, things like startup costs, things like even looking at hardware, software costs, like breaking all that down. The more you can demonstrate that you know what you're doing and that the publisher's money is going to be well spent, the more trustworthy it makes you. So, talk about target audience, talk about budget, and then you should also consider a go-to-market plan. Some interesting hooks here. Think about how you're going to use influencers. Think about how you're going to use streamer. Think about how you're going to leverage social media. Maybe there's some interesting brand partners you can kind of swing into the game. The marketing of a game is kind of its own separate beast. But again, showing the publisher that you've looked at the full scope of this project and what it means to bring it to market is going to be a big demonstration of you as a professional. Other things to think about on the go-to-market side, some publishers like a DLC plan or some kind of long-term player retention roadmaps. That might be something that's worthwhile. It's not going to make sense for every game, but it's going to be, it might make sense for you. So kind of have that on your checklist of things to at least consider. So question that came in here, should the go-to-market plan be part of the pitch? I would say briefly, I would at least dedicate a slide to it if you can. It doesn't need to be the full go-to-market plan, but it's definitely something that can be eye-catching and noteworthy to a publisher. So, for example, the game that we're releasing next month is called Bite the Bullet, and as part of the Bite the Bullet launch campaign, we folded in influencers that had a total of had a total of 30 million subscribers across their YouTube channels, Twitch channels, Twitter followings, etc. And when we call out one of those noteworthy people, so the LA Beast is one of them. He's a YouTuber that does like competitive eating challenges. Calling out that we have him as an influencing partner and we have a content creation relationship with him. Having that demonstration that we did that in the past with Bite the Bullet has made it easier for us to have publishing conversations for future games that we're working on. So even though the LA Beast might not be the influencer we use for our next project, being able to point backwards and say, this is an example of what we mean when we say influencer relationships that we have access to. Here's this guy, 2.5 million YouTube subscribers. He was in this documentary for us. He's placed in the game this way, and these are the kind of social media assets he's sharing. All those kinds of things helped us open some new doors, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does.
So that's a really quick rundown of publisher conversations. I realize that 15 minutes is not going to be not going to make everyone experts, but I'm hoping we found a couple good content anchors that maybe we can dive into those points more deeply with questions if you have them.
Sure. Students, do you have any questions? Do you want me to ask questions? Questions coming.
I see them. The anticipation is intense.
Yes, you want me to ask questions? Or yes, you have questions? Or yes, you want to stick your tongue out? No. Okay. I'm old. You can't just use emojis for me. It doesn't work. I don't know what they mean. I just learned uwu yesterday.
So I'm going to jump in on
Yeah, go for it.
Sonic's question here. In terms of accepting applications from recipients, do you keep track of what is popular at the time or take that into account? Absolutely. That's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, the trends of what people are playing now is definitely worth considering around how a game might be successful. But at the same time, it's a little dangerous because it's very easy to miss the trend. So if you're banking on the trend, if you're banking on battle royale games being the big thing right now, by the time you get your game out the door, it probably won't be, and or you'll be entering a market that's like really saturated with battle royale games because 10 other developers got there first. And that's something that we hear from publishers as well. It's if that it, if a certain type of game is doing really well and you have the idea to do a twist on that, it's not that it's wrong out of the gate. There's something to be careful of, because assume that if you're thinking that way, 30 other people are also pitching that publisher that way. So if the hook for your game is that it's a battle royale that does this little thing differently, keep in mind that you're going to be kind of lumped into this mix of 30 pitches that are also battle royale games. And that's a tough spot to be. It makes it a lot harder to be competitive. So as you're thinking about pitching, yes, you want to kind of pay attention to what's happening in the trends in games, but you also want to try to be ahead of it a little bit and still push for some innovation, to do something interesting with your project. So for us, when we're looking at games that we publish, it's part of that too. On the retro side, it's not quite as intense because there's not as many retro developers as there are indie developers or single A, double A, triple A developers. The homebrew content is not as plentiful, so it's a little bit easier to stand out on that side. So other questions here.
Oh, and do you mind reading the questions out loud when you
Yep.
address them?
Yeah.
Because we're recording.
So even Steven, if you aren't completely certain who might like your game, yeah, we can unpack that a little bit. I think there's a couple layers to that. There's a couple layers to that point or that topic. The one is your concept could be so different that it's hard to imagine a player base for it. I would argue that those kinds of content are going to be relatively rare. Most game concepts are built on the foundation of other game concepts, that kind of like standing on the shoulders of giants sorts of thing. If you have something that's truly off the wall, you might think about pushing your demo out to a couple of different communities and just getting reactions from players to get an idea of what sort of player styles, what sort of player communities react to that game. I think it would be a pretty uncomfortable spot to be in a conversation with a publisher and not be able to describe what players will get excited about your game. So think through that a lot before you start putting it in front of a publisher. Um, the next question, you mentioned that gameplay is king for your company. How important is narrative when considering games to publish? Narrative definitely matters. I think when we talk about gameplay, I know that you can dice it up. I guess when I was using gameplay, and this is my fault for not being super clear about it, I was looking at the whole of the gameplay experience, right? So how does the entire game feel? And that's again super fuzzy approach here. But when you talk about what that game experience is, narrative is definitely a part of it. Narrative it definitely matters. And there's a lot of games where narrative is either more important or much less important, just depending on the type of gameplay that you're creating, right? So narrative is a big deal, but narrative alone probably won't save your game, with the exception of like a visual novel genre or something like. So let me catch up on some messages here. So, Brian's noting about the creative opportunity for a PowerPoint deck and what that actually means. Um, I agree that deck should be professional, should be clean, great use of fonts and colors organization definitely matters. Um, let me see. Let me pull up an example of one of our decks. I'll see if I can share my screen to give you an idea. This is all Mega Cat secret sauce. What is one that we have not that we're okay with 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 it being released? Okay, so I'll share. So Another Rainy Day is a VR title that we're currently shopping, and I have not shared my screen before in Discord. Does someone want to give me a quick pro tip on how to do that?
Uh, According to our students, it's better to share the whole screen. So just like hit the first button, not share an application screen because the application screens get jittery.
Hmm.
So if you can
So
do that, or if you want, you can just take a screenshot and then share the image into the chat, and we can all look at it that way, and that's sometimes easier.
I think I will do that.
Yeah. Screen
And
share is not Discord's strength yet. I don't think. I mean, for playing games, yes. I don't think it was meant to be group meeting software.
I dream of the day it is better group meeting software for sure. All right, so if you guys bear with me just a second, this will be our slide from Another Rainy Day. So Another Rainy Day is a tower defense VR game, and the blurry image you'll see in the corner is actually an animated GIF. So it's it looks much better when it's live. Let me hop over to Discord.
You can stream your view based on a little button where it says voice connected, and there's a go live button. You can use the go live button, and it'll produce your images as well.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
I think for now we'll stick with the image in the interest of time. So here's an example of one of our slides. So we're a little bit fortunate in terms of our company size and our talent pool. We have somebody that's specifically dedicated to graphic design on our team that manages. A lot of times his full-time job is just making decks as we work with clients and as we work on pitch projects. So this one was hustled together as an overnight sort of thing. But you can see here how Another Rainy Day, this medieval fantasy world where you're defending a castle from orcs, then you're using spells and arrows and potion. We kind of build on that aesthetic, and we extend the universe here, but with the PowerPoint. So we make sure it kind of matches the feel of the game. Really crisp, clean font. High priority on the bolded list of the features, and then also interjecting that gameplay footage wherever we can. So I hope that helps on the PowerPoint side to give you some ideas.
Speaking personally, I always find it a really interesting mix between getting across the information that you want them to have clearly and staying aesthetically appealing. I think it's why people who make good PowerPoints are kind of a very rare commodity.
It's a skill in its own right. That's for sure. I mean, it's not something that I personally. My background is writing, so when it comes to a PowerPoint, I'm I'm really good at figuring out what we should have on it in a very
Yeah.
succinct way. But as far as visually designing it, yeah, it definitely takes some practice. So that's why for anyone in the class here, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take some extra time to learn some of these graphic design skills as well. And there's several graphic design resources available to you that are relatively budget friendly. You might have mixed results at first, but things like Fiverr or 99 Design, you do have access to other designers, and there's no shame in reaching out and hiring one if you need.
I also find, sorry, I'm Marshall, I'm jumping into your talk, but I also find
No, go
going
for it.
and researching, spending a bunch of time on the internet, going great presentation decks and just watching other people's sample presentation decks is a great way to get ideas about spacing and font size and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a lot of that old adage, good artists borrow, great artists steal, right? It's not about copying someone, but learning the best practices from people that have done it really well can
Yep.
make your life a lot easier. So Kyle's question here is, which game was considered the most successful? I believe that's referencing our catalog. So Coffee Crisis is probably our Coffee Crisis has had the most reach, as probably the best way I should describe it. Coffee Crisis got a retro release as well as several modern releases and a lot of updates on top of that. When you look at our retro catalog itself, Little Medusa has done very well for us. Fort Parker's Crunch Out did very well for us. That was a Devolver Digital collaboration. So Devolver Digital is the company behind games like Hotline Miami and Enter the Gungeon and titles like that. So that's those have been pretty powerful for us. Tanzer is a project we published, did not develop. Tanzer did really well, and so did Old Towers. Um, I think successful should be a little bit of a fuzzy term. Unit sold matters, but especially when you're early on in your development career, you should be thinking about what opportunities your game can open for you in the future. So don't get totally wrapped up in sales. Use that game as an opportunity to network. Use that game as an opportunity to make more relationships and more contacts in the industry. So even if it's not the game that lets you retire as a creative king or creative queen, if that game helped you get to the next level and made your next project more viable, that's a big win, especially early on.
Mm. Looks like my students don't have any other questions, which means I get to ask you a question.
Go for it.
uh, so I guess the question that I have is about how your company positioned itself, like a broader question. Like you picked a really interesting niche to get involved in. Do you think that has helped you make a more like a more stable business model? And are you always keeping an eye out on the market as a whole to know if that niche is the right place to be still?
I think retro is going to be a part of our DNA forever, just because there's so much passion for it within our team and our company culture. Um, for a while there, it was the only thing that we did, so that's definitely an evolving part of our DNA, right? It's not something that's locked in any static way or in any unchanging way. But yeah, I mean the retro angle ended up being a pretty big cheat code for us because at the time, this has changed over the last several years, there weren't a lot of people doing it. So being retro experts and having retro products and having retro connections gave us a lot of access that we wouldn't have had as a traditional indie development company. So access, I mean things like events. We were able to trade into a lot of events by having retro hardware and arcade cabinets and consoles and things to bring to events. So we were able to get a lot more reach for our company early on with relatively little budget because we had
Mm.
the retro card to play. Even today, the retro angle is a really powerful way for us get attention or to start a conversation. So, for example, at PAX East in 2019, I cold knocked the Nintendo booth trying to talk to a specific publisher that was featuring a game there, and the person that was working the front desk of the kind of like the press side kind of shooed me away, and I said, "Well, just before I go, can I get your reaction on something?" And I handed them one of our wooden cartridges that we did. So it's a cartridge that's hand carved out of wood that actually plays on an NES. You see their eyes light up and you see them like gasp. They immediately take a photo to put on their Instagram, and suddenly you're having a conversation about retro cartridges that can then turn into a bigger business conversation. So
Mhm.
the retro stuff has been a really powerful hack for us. Unfortunately, it's not an easy hack to replicate.
Yeah,
It's not something that everyone can just pick up and kind of apply to their business. But I think the lesson there is to understand what people care about and what people will react to, and really build on a core piece of what your company is going to be or who you're going to be as a creative. Because if you have that really like passionate foundation that resonates with other people, that's community and make connections.
that's really solid advice. Thank you. Um, I think we have 2 more minutes left, so I will ask you one more question.
Go for it.
Um, if you marketing is your specialty, and this is a marketing class, so I'll ask a marketing question. If a team that was launching a game with a very small marketing budget, like minuscule by your standards, like maybe they've decided to put $1,500 towards their marketing budget, what would be the thing you would tell them to spend their money on? What do you think is
So
the most effective marketing strategy people can use today to sell a game?
yeah, so the first thing is do all the stuff that's free,
Hmm.
right? And there's a surprising amount of that. So things like game listings, things like doing trades with other indies. So a trade can be something as simple as, hey, I'll tweet you if you tweet me. You can do trades with some smaller brands. So for example, in Bite the Bullet, Balls Guarana. I don't know if you guys remember Balls Energy Drink. They're really big sponsor of like LAN parties and stuff back in the day. Balls is in Bite the Bullet as like a hidden NPC. So we were able to put them in as an art asset to make it a marketing touch point for them and make them a part of the marketing. And that opened up some really cool collaborative doors with them. And that's also one of the hacks we use for influencers and things like that. So don't be afraid to trade. Don't be afraid to use your game assets and the skill sets that cost you time but not necessarily money to produce things for people. And then when you start looking at where you put your actual budget, I'd be very careful around influencer dollars. Those are really easy to burn for a lot of nothing. Um, and I'd be really careful about the PR agencies and the marketing agencies that'll probably approach you at some point. There's a lot of really good ones out there, but there's also a lot of indie publishing companies or indie marketing companies that will make a quick buck off of your project and not really move the needle for you. So it might be worth it to spend some time learning Facebook ads or Twitter ads or Reddit ads. Reddit ads have been pretty successful for us. So I don't want to run us too far over time. I can talk about marketing for a very, very, very long time.
Just a second. Don't fall for the sweet words, dubious marketing firms. This was wonderful. Thank you. I think that we're good. I guess my last statement. Okay, I'll ask one more question just to. So I promised you a half.
I'll take it. I'll take as much time
Okay.
as you want. I just don't want to. I don't
No,
want to
no,
take
no.
away from your other speaker's time.
Oh no, the next person's not coming till 1:30, so we have a little bit of time.
Okay.
So my
Yeah,
last
I'm happy to
question
take some more
is,
time.
thanks, is there's one thing you said early on that said one decision that publishers sometimes base their decisions on, I'm going to the top here, is the developer reputation and the position in the community. So all of these, some of these students are graduating this now-ish, and then some are graduating next year, but what can they do sort of to build their online reputation now, so that if they're in a position to be asking for funding in a few years, they have the right sort of networks and the right kind of position to be able to do that.
Yeah, there's a ton of layers there.
I know. Sorry, I'm asking you
So
hard questions.
no. I was trying to use that to buy myself some time to think about organizing and structuring my thought on how best to answer that. There's several layers, right? So I think if we're talking about a game that you're actively working on for some time, there's some low-hanging fruit in terms of online communities or online traditions where you can share screenshots. So like Screenshot Saturday is still a pretty active thing on Twitter and on Reddit. There's several Reddit communities and several Twitter hashtags that are specifically focused on things like indie art or indie demos and stuff like that. And that's in that, excuse me, that's in that bucket of free stuff that you can work on. That's free networking that you can do that'll get you some more followers, get you some more connections. If you've kind of honed in specific genre or type of game where you want to do most of your work, you should start finding the people that are active in that community and think about those people in terms of there's several different kind of there's several different levels of those folks, right? Working with for different reasons. So it's worth networking with the people that are at the entry level where you are, because 5 years from now, those people will be in very different places. So it's good to have those relationships now. It's good to share what you're learning with your peers, so that everybody can grow together. And when everybody has bigger opportunities in the future, you can kind of share the wealth. Then start looking up at developers that have maybe launched one or two games, then look at developers that have launched one or two games, has had some success, and kind of keep building and building and building until you've kind of mapped out who the market leaders are, the behemoths in the space. And you should be trying to interact with all of them on some level. It's always going to be easiest to interact with the people that are closer to where you are now. But if you throw a couple Hail Mary passes out there, you'll be surprised who responds. We've gotten some pretty incredible meetings and some really cool conversations with people just because we were brave enough to ask and did so in a professional way. So follow those people on Twitter, connect with them on LinkedIn, try to track them down an event, try to make those relationships in person if that's a possibility for you. That can be very expensive, but it's also very worthwhile to be showing your face at those events. Um, so those are things that you can start thinking about at this very moment to start growing your career.
Great. Thank you so much.
Happy to do
Uh,
it.
I think that's it for me, and we are gonna, oh, Stephen can't hear anymore.
Hmm. Can you
Oh
still hear
no,
me?
I can.
Okay. Same here.
The internet is funny. That's okay. We're gonna go take a 10-minute break before our next guest comes. So everybody test your connections. Marshall, you're welcome to stay if you want to hear the other guest speaker, or otherwise, we will wish you a great day, and hopefully I'll catch up with you at some game event in the future when we're all
Uh,
allowed out of our house again.
I would love that. As far as everyone here, it's easy to track me down on the MegaCat Discord. So if you have follow up questions, you're always welcome to ping me there. I'm happy to share things that we've learned and things that might be helpful for you. And I can't wait to see the games that you make.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, take care.
Bye.